Hi, everyone. Welcome back to session two of the Right Response, getting it right with your emails. So, in session two, we're going to be talking about how do you get ready to receive the emails that you're going to be responding to. Because when it comes to email writing, it is not just about the skills, but it is also about the mindset. And one of the things that I think has been really useful for me when I have been sharing about mindset has been the TFA model. So that's what I'm going to share with you. As we go through this session, you may want to download the PDF handouts which you can have by you. It's actually for all the everything that we're going to cover in this session. So do have it alongside as you go through the videos. So the TFA model is something that came up for me some years back when I was doing neuro-linguistic programming. And together with emotional intelligence and the work I do there, I realized that when it comes to helping us understand how communication works and how our brain processes information, I feel that this is one of the most useful models to get to know. It's all about really how we create these subjective experiences for ourselves. So, what do I mean by a subjective experience? So, let's imagine that you and I and a couple of other people went to watch a movie together. Now, after the movie, sometimes we may discuss the movie, and you may bring up things, and I may bring up things, or scenes, or situations in the movie that the other party, doesn't quite remember. And it's kind of strange, like, right? Because we watched the same movie. So, how is it that we had such different experiences? Well, that's kind of why we are all so unique. We all have different experiences of life. We have different values, different beliefs. We come from many different backgrounds. And that's why we have our own subjective experience. And in a way, you can call this subjective experience our map of the world, and how we navigate through life, how we navigate our relationships and our communication has a lot to do with the map of the world we carry with ourselves. But how does this map of the world get formed? And what are some of the things that we may want to consider, especially in the context of writing emails? So let me just share with you a series of exercises. You can use perhaps the reverse of your handout for this, or grab another piece of A4 paper, which you can then just add to that folder I told you that you need to have as you go through the session. And, when I ask you to pause and try out the exercise, do try it out. And so that you have a better handle on exactly what I'm trying to talk about. Now, for the first exercise, I want you to pay attention to a paragraph I'm going to show you in a while, and I'd like you to count how many F's, letter F, that you see. Okay, so how many letter F's do you see in the paragraph that I'm going to show you? I'm going to show it to you now, and I'm only going to flash it for a while. And in that time, I'm hoping that you will get an answer. Okay. Okay. So I hope that you didn't pause at that. I hope you will just pause right now and just write down a number or think of a number that of the letter F's that you saw. Now, typically, when I do this in a live workshop, I get any number of answers. I've had two, I've had three, four, five, six, seven, but the reality is this: there are only six of them. Or maybe for those of you who only counted two, it's a surprise that there are six of them. So, what did our brain do? When we see words, the brain's tendency is to read or scan the information. And because of that, we don't need to really pay attention to every single F. And what would have happened is that as we scanned through the sentence, we would have missed out on a couple of things. So, this first process that happens in our brain as we receive data is that our brain tends to exclude parts of information that may actually be important. And we call these deletions. So our brain deletes information. Now, can this be a useful thing? Yes, because when you're reading a paragraph, you don't need to really like pay attention to every single word that's written there, especially like the small words. But when we're talking about communication and we're talking about responding to challenging emails, scanning an email which may have a higher likelihood of deletion, a deletion of what really is being said or what is being said between the lines, can cause us more issues when we are responding to the email. Okay, so whilst it might be useful in the real world, it might keep us efficient in some contexts, it might actually be detrimental in the context of emails. Now, here is a second thing that our brain does. And for this exercise, I need you to draw out 9 dots like you see formed on this slide. Okay, so just take your time, draw the 9 dots. You can pause if you feel that I'm going too fast. And here are your instructions. I'd like you to join the 9 dots with 4 straight lines. And you need to do this without taking the pen from off the paper. Okay, so you have to have your pen on the paper all the time, and you need to draw out your 4 lines and making sure that all the dots are connected up with the 4 lines. So just curious, maybe some of you have done this exercise before. If you still need time, you may want to pause before I show you the solution. So the solution is this. Now, did you get this right? So how do we draw the 4 lines? You can see that where the arrow is, you might have to start from outside of maybe the corner of what we kind of imagined was a square, and you go up 2, 3, and then 4, right? So 4 lines and all the 9 dots are joined up. Now, what happened with the brain? Why did it get stuck? For some of us who did get stuck with coming up with a solution, our brain decided to assign the 9 dots to mean that it was in the form of a square. So because of that, we tended to distort what we see. Now, again, distortion can be a good thing. People who are artists, who are architects, who are interior decorators, they have to distort what is there or not there in a room, or, as they imagine buildings. It's a form of distortion, good distortion, right? But very often what happens is when we hear noises like creaking floorboards in an empty house at night, it might, we might distort the sound to mean something else, when really all it is that it's contracting in the cold or expanding in the heat, whatever the case may be. So why is this important for us to know? Sometimes what words we read, what tone we kind of hear in our head as we are reading someone else's email, we may actually distort it according to our own experiences, which may not be accurate. So this is something us writers need to be very mindful of. And finally, here's the third thing that our brain does. So imagine that there are 3 doors, and that one of the doors, for some reason, 200 people try to open up the door, and yet only 4 people manage to. Now, this was a real experiment that was done. How do you think those 4 people manage to open that door? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Well, here's the thing. Often I get told maybe they had a key, maybe it was a sliding door, maybe it was flipping, a door that flipped. Very good creative answers, but here is the correct answer. The hinges were on the same side as the handle. Doors are not normally made that way, right? we assume that the hinges should be on the opposite side of the handle. So in this case, what we were doing was that we were generalizing. And again, we need generalizations. We can't always be trying to figure out how a chair works or how a door works. So generalizations are good most of the time. But sometimes we tend to generalize groups of people, or we tend to generalize someone that we've maybe had an experience with, and we assume that the person is always angry or always upset or always a troublemaker. So sometimes we delete, distort, and generalize, and this is not good because it can impact the way we write back. So because of these processes, the deletion, the distortion, the generalization, and because we delete, distort uniquely, we need to find ways to make sure that they are minimized. And just that awareness that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are, is already, taking a few steps forward or few steps ahead of a lot of writers out there who sometimes just don't get it. We are all not the same, right? And because of this, we have different perceptions, and as you know, perception can be more powerful than reality. So we need to be careful about the perceptions that we are creating. In the context of writing emails, it's really about what we see and what we hear, right? So, yes, the language used in emails that we receive, it doesn't mean that when someone writes something, it necessarily means the way they meant it, or rather, the way we think it's meant. So, we need to be very careful about the language that is used, the tone that we are hearing in our head as to how that person is writing the email. All this can have an impact. Now, it has an impact, especially when you see it in the context of the TFA communication model. Okay, so how it works is that yes, we experience a lot of things in our life through external events, which is received by our five senses. But because of the filters, which are the beliefs, the values, and the past experiences, amongst other things, we delete, distort, and generalize very uniquely. And because of that, we have this map of the world, which then impacts our emotions. Now, that is us as we receive information. Now, here's the thing. Because of the way we delete, distort, and generalize, it affects the way we are thinking, which then affects our emotions, which then creates all this series of facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, and actions. And this is what is going to be received by the person receiving our emails. And that may create great results or maybe not so great, right? So, how does the think, feel, act fit into this? So, very easily you can see that in the context of the TFA model, whilst now you understand, the different processes and why it creates those different thoughts, the thoughts affect our feelings, the feelings affect our actions. So, for all of us, as we take steps towards writing better emails and making sure that we are getting better results with the people who are receiving them, whether it's our colleagues, our bosses, or our clients and customers. So, how does Think, Feel, Act model help us? It's going to help us better regulate our emotions so we are responding to our emails rather than reacting to emails that are challenging. It's going to help us be more empathetic. It's going to help us ask better quality questions and just be that much better responding to emails. Now that we understand the big picture, it is now time to think about what else in the context of mindset do we need to keep in mind when it comes to getting ready to receive our emails.